I was just talking to my next guest about last year. I was on about 50 different leadership podcasts, having this conversation about the rising leader, what I do, and most of them were actually really pretty good. One in particular, Mike Harbour's leading up podcast, the lead up podcast, was in particularly a great conversation. I felt like I had a kindred spirit that I was speaking to, and immediately when I looked at the books that he's written and what he brings to the table, I wanted to reciprocate and have him come on the Rising Leader podcast. Officially, Mike Harbour is a renowned leader, speaker, and author who has made a significant impact in the field of leadership development. With over 25 years of experience in leadership and as the president of Harbour Resources, he's helped numerous individuals and organizations realize their full potential and achieve extraordinary results. He's the author of Power Principles and the book that we're going to be talking about today, Quit Losing Talent, 20 Leadership Tactics to Win, Keep, and Inspire Great Employees, because this is something that we need to be talking about because it's what my clients are dealing with every single day. So, Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Mark, excited to be here, man. I agree. We had a great conversation a few weeks ago on the Lead Up podcast. I love your Rising Leader content. Look, we have a leadership vacuum in America for sure. And so what you teach and speak about, what I teach and speak about, people are hungry for, and hopefully we can give them some good ideas to move forward.
Yeah, you speak on all forms of topics of leadership. The reason I wanted to focus on this particular topic is because my clients are finding the job market in the U.S. is just so good. I have government contractor clients who can't get people to get clearances because they don't want to go on site. They want to work in Miami, and and they can make $250,000 a year working with a view from the beach. And they're just having trouble retaining, motivating, because again, I think there's a different perspective in lifestyle and work now than there was pre-COVID and before. So define the problem for me with what you see. Why'd you write the book, and what are you seeing in organizations today post COVID that the challenges with personnel?
The real reason I wrote the book is, I've been doing this for a long time. I started my career. I left the Army in 1998. I went to work for a recruiting firm in 1999. So I was recruiting leaders for healthcare organizations. My background's healthcare leadership, healthcare operations, and then in 2006, I started my own business, recruiting leaders, continuing to do that after a few more years in healthcare operations. But I had some clients, Mark, that started asking me, we're doing a good job with recruiting people, but we need to coach them up. We needed them to be better once we get here. So I saw an opportunity, Mark, and in 2010, I started shifting my business to a coaching and training and development business, which is my love, really. The recruiting is more transactional, but the training development of people is more relational, building people up, encouraging them to be better. But then, come COVID, as you know, and everybody listening knows, there was a mass exodus of people for various reasons, right? They got to experience working from home. Number one, they didn't want to go back to the workplace. Cultures were dysfunctional, and they didn't want to go back to that. Here's the interesting thing, Mark, and you know this as well. For 30 years, we've been talking about the coming workforce shortages, right? That we're going to experience. We've been talking about employee engagement being poor, but doing nothing about it. And so I've taken what I did is I took the 30 years of experience and put it into a book, because like you, when I'm working with one customer, that's one customer I'm helping. But in a book, I can help hundreds, if not thousands, or tens of thousands of people. So I wanted to put the framework of what I teach, coach, develop leaders to do into a book that maybe they can't bring me in personally to do that, but there's some ideas in the book that they begin to implement in their own leadership, because we know we're only as good as the people we lead, we have on our team. So we have to get better about treating them like valuable assets so that we can keep them in our workforce. And that's the real reason I wrote the book.
That's smart. And we were talking off mic about the fact that you're developing an online program again, so you can impact more people because you're one person. So the more you can exponentially export your expertise is great. I love that alliteration I just made. So the way you structure the book is in 4 sections. retention, create a talent lock culture, release, have them sing your praises, attract, be a talent magnet, activation, launch their potential quickly. I love the comprehensive way that you put it. Tell me about the layout of the book and how you bring people through that.
Yeah, look, what I teach is you can start anywhere. We actually have a survey that we give clients to say, okay, identify your biggest needs right now. And you can open up to that section in the book and start applying the tactics that we teach in the book to hopefully stop the bleed in that particular area. But
It is a
what I
handbook.
also
It is a handbook in that fashion. Like
yeah,
I was able to, you laid out the table of contents in a way that you can find specifically what the challenges you're having in with a person or in the organization and go right to that section. So really well
yeah, you
done.
can go right to that tactic, right to that strategy. It's not a book that's meant to be read from front to back and applied that way. Now, but I teach this like driving a car, Mark. If you have a wheel that's out of balance, you're going to have a rough ride. It's going to be a shaky ride. And so you need to put attention into all four of those strategies that we teach. And I've kind of renamed, look, attraction is recruitment. Most organizations talk about recruitment, and they think, man, we just got to recruit more people. And I'm more of a law of attraction guy. We need to attract the right talent, right? To be a talent magnet for the right talent. So I've just kind of reframed the whole recruitment idea to attraction. The other thing is organizations call on they have an idea of called onboarding, and it's not, and they don't do it really well. But I talked about activation. I'm more like that seed that's planted, that acorn seed that's planted. We've got to activate the potential in that seed. There's some things we've
Mm.
got to do. If we bring in a new employee, the most important days in a new employee's life and a leader's life with that new employee, the first 90 days. And there's very tactical things that we teach in the book that a leader has to do in order to activate that potential and start the growth of that individual, or it lies on the ground like an acorn falling from a tree and dies in that first 90 days, and we don't really get the best effort out of them. So that's kind of the idea behind those four
Let's
strategies.
start there because you say in the book don't hit the ground running. What do you mean?
Don't hit the ground running. What I mean is most employers, they hire Mark and they say, Mark, here's your office, here's your department where you'll be working. Just kind of watch everybody and you'll figure it out. That's onboarding for a lot of organizations, right? And what I really teach is in the first week, me as a leader, I teach two things in the book. One, we need to have a stay ambassador. And then the second person we need to have is a stay navigator. Okay. So the stay navigator, let's talk about that person first. That stay navigator, Mark, is your mentor, your preceptor, the person you're going to lock arms with every day for the next 90 days. The stay navigator is going to make sure you learn where to be, where to go, how we think, how we act, how we behave, also the technical skills that have to be important. So that stay navigator is with you every single day for that first 90 days to make sure we're launching your potential. We're getting you off the ground. We're not just throwing you out onto the road and hope you hit the ground running, right? The stay ambassador, on the other hand, is the boss. Maybe it's the CEO, maybe it's the department leader. That stay ambassador is doing a weekly check-in and saying, hey, Mark, how'd the first week go? What'd you learn? Are there things that you need to relearn or we need to give more attention to? So the stay navigator is the teacher. The stay ambassador is the person that creates this culture of we want to keep you. What do we need to do to keep you? Are you going to show up Monday, Mark? Hey, it's Friday. Are you going to show up Monday? Is there anything that prevents you from coming? And so really what I try to teach organizations is have a 90-day process to get this person off the runway. Don't just expect them to hit the runway and take off.
Yeah. So stay is an acronym.
Yeah, STAY is an acronym. It stands for a systemized process, right? We need to have that 90-day. It's a system where we teach people. It's transfer of knowledge. And what can we do to transfer our knowledge, our values, our behavior to that new employee? Don't wait till day 91 to start to try to transfer how we behave at this organization. It's achievement oriented. What are the things that we need to achieve, right, in that first 9 days? Learn. And then it's got to be you focused, Mark. We can't, not every person is exactly the same. That's what the Y stands for. There's certain things I've got to teach Mark as an individual there's certain things. We have two things we teach, and a UDP, which is a universal development pathway. Every new employee gets taught
Right.
all of the things from the universal development pathway. And then the individual development pathway or plan is, okay, what individually does Mark need to learn? And is Mark a fast learner or a slow learner? Not a dumb or smart person, but does Mark learn fast or does he learn slow? And where do I need to spend attention? That's what we mean by you focused.
Yeah, and I love this. I love the stay process and having someone responsible for that and checking in to make sure. So it's, it's systematic. So it's something that's just, we know this is part of the process. We know, like it's repeatable. It's everybody understands it. I love that it's, every time my clients bring in someone at a really high level, that person comes with a culture, right? They've been someplace
Bingo.
else, right? They come with
Yes.
a culture. And what you're saying is, let's get that early. Your
Mm,
culture is valid. Your culture worked where you are. This is our culture. This is the values, right? This is the value of the CEO. You step over here, you're going to screw yourself, right?
ooh, that is so,
Right?
man, that is so smart what Mark just said. Listeners, I don't want you to miss this. 90% of everything we do is habit oriented, Mark. You know this from a mindset
Right.
standpoint. My job as a leader in the first 90 days of an employee is to change their habits. Change them from maybe the bad habits they bring from a prior culture and organization to the good habits of our team, our department of an organization. Brilliant, Mark. Yes, we've got to change habits in those first. That's what
Yeah,
the
it
step
good, good.
process
The
is all about.
specific thing I was thinking of, we had one of my clients hired a guy, and he was going out for $1,000 dinners, taking people out, and and the CEO was seeing these, and it's like, that's not our way. We don't do that. We don't fly first class, and we don't do $1,000 dinners, and had to kind of bring them down, and that wasn't explicitly said and wasn't explicitly taught. So your stay process really helps port someone in there. I really like the idea of getting someone, ready to do it. I think that handles years of misguided trajectory.
Yeah.
If you can get that early.
Yeah, we just, the current state in the marketplace is we just expect people to get it. And then, what organizations do is they hire people for what they can do, their technical skill or their educational background, right? That's
Or their
they
Rolodex, who they know, their key.
Yeah, who they know, right? But and then they throw them in this job, and we realize we don't really like this person. We don't really like their habits. Their values don't match up to ours, so we fire them for who they are, right? And so we need to do a better job in that attraction phase, making sure I have a tactic I call, create a who scorecard. And really it's about identifying the who before we ever get into the interview process and hire who fits versus skill fits, or skill sets. And so we need to do a better job of that. And then it's a lot easier to do
So
that
slow that
state.
down. Slow that down for me. So
Yeah.
so how is that practical in an organization? How do you get people to have a culture of the who scorecard and thinking ahead like that?
Yes, fantastic question. Another one of our tactics is target check your values. You got to know your values because I can work with anybody, Mark, if their values are pretty much aligned with mine. If you and I have competing values, we may want the same thing, but if our values compete against one another, I'm dishonest and you're honest. I lack integrity. You're integrous. That's a complete mismatch of values. You'll
Right.
cut corners. I won't. We're going to have trouble working together, right? So, what an organization and a leader needs to know is what are the values of this team? What are the behaviors that we're going to hold people in alignment to and hire to that? What I teach is 99% of the time when I'm interviewing somebody, they're already a skill fit. They're going to have some technical
Mhm.
competency, or I wouldn't be interviewing them. So I need to spend time finding out, are they going to be a values fit, what I call a who fit? Will they be trouble for me in my leadership? Because as a leader, a mishire is one of your biggest challenges. You're going to spend 80-90% of your time trying to fix that person if you mishire and then you disrupt the culture of your team. So, how we do that, Mark, is be really clear on our values, what those are, what behaviors and attitudes need to show up around those values, and then create interview questions around our values to identify, is that candidate a good who fit culturally so we don't disrupt our culture?
Nice. And then, so once we get them onboarded, you have a whole section on functional endurance. Keeping people, firing on all cylinders. What are some of the ingredients to that?
Yeah, I love this chapter here, this section, this tactic in the book. I wrap it around assessments. I use a DISC assessment,
Mhm.
Mark. And probably your listeners are familiar with different personality assessments, the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, the Strength Finders. It doesn't matter what assessment you use. I'm a fan of DISC because it's simple to use. It doesn't require a PhD to understand. But one of the greatest things we can do as a leader is to understand the wiring of those that we lead. Like, how do they think? How do they behave? What types of job activities, tasks give them energy? What
Mhm.
types of job tasks drain them of energy, right? So when we think about functional endurance, I want Mark to be in a task area that gives him energy. When I do that, he's going to stay with me. He's going to be more engaged. He's going to be happier. And again, I'm not a believer that my job is to create happiness in the workplace. It's my job to create engagement in the workplace. But we do this around our strengths. If I understand what Mark's functional strengths are, then I try to give him tasks that are going to put him in his strength zone. Now, I can't do that always, but as a leader, when you think about delegating, or what I teach in the book, equipping others to do things, we need to equip them to do tasks that are in their functional areas of performance. That's going to help them create an engaged mindset. They're going to want to come to work. But if you give somebody who's a social butterfly a task of creating a spreadsheet or managing that spreadsheet, they're going to dread coming to work. They're going to be disengaged. And that's just one example of how you can decrease engagement versus increase engagement.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I like Patrick Lencioni's Working Genius model.
Mm-hmm.
He just came out with that like last year, and that really kind of been eye opening to a lot of my clients. I just did an Enneagram workshop for one of my clients, and there it's a high volume, high action organization, and to see how the different personalities fit in, where certain personality types, like a driver, fits in perfectly, and that's kind of in their wheelhouse. Where there's someone who's, again, a little more social, a little more feeling oriented,
Mm-hmm.
can thrive in that organization, but they spend their time doing things that they don't like, so it's a little more draining for them. So they have to understand what they're sacrificing to put themselves in that environment. So it was really an interesting and eye-opening experience when you actually put real people in a room talking about their experience of the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
And it lights one person up and it just drags another person down. And then you can have a conversation about how to support each other. I think that's really cool. Uh, the
Yeah.
other
So
thing, the other thing you talk about in the book is a hot topic, because depending on what state I'm coaching in, you can't even bring this word up, and other states you can, and it's welcomed. Equity versus equality. How do you address that, and how do you help organizations work that? So first of all, define equity versus equality.
yeah, look, I'm a believer in I'm not I'll just say it, and this may hurt me a little bit, but I'm not a fan of DEI type programs. I'm a believer that we should treat all people with value, right? And we shouldn't separate people by all of the things that we try to separate people by in America. That's what really DEI programs are have become, or separation by age, sex, gender. And look, we've done this for years. Education. You went to one school, I went to a different school, and so there's a lot of separation in that. And so I think when I think of the topic of equity and equality, not everybody's equal, right? I mean, a new employee is not equal to an employee that's got 20 years. And so we shouldn't try to create equality for every employee. What we should try to do is create equity. And what that means is I take an older employee and I have a different level of responsibility for them. And I'm challenging them to feed back to the younger generation, right?
Sure.
Feed down, give a hand up to that younger generation. So I want to create an environment of equity where I help the younger generation climb the same ladder for me, or I help them understand what obstacles are in the way and how they can remove them, or how they need to communicate with certain people on the team, or where there might be roadblocks to ideas that they have. And that's really my philosophy when it comes to equity and equality. I don't think we can create an equal environment, because if we do, Mark, let's just put it this way. Mark, you got 20 years of experience. You've sold millions of dollars worth of product in your organization. I come in and I've got zero experience, and they pay me the exact same thing they pay you.
Mhm.
That would be equality, and that's asinine, right? We can't do that. That's not. Well, we're doing the same job. I'm selling the same thing. I want to make the same thing Mark makes, but companies can't thrive that way, right? Where they thrive is looking to help me, Mike, grow into the same person that Mark has become, where I too can sell millions of dollars worth of products, and create interactions and create revenue for the organization. So it's more about equity, and how can I, again, this goes back to our values, right? How can I, as a leader, create a development program where we're building people up, whether they're young or maybe they have a handicap, or maybe, whatever. How can we remove obstacles for them so they have the same chance to grow, not the same equality that I have? And again, that's a deep subject, but that's
Right.
my take on, equality versus equity versus the DEI programs that are out there.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So before we go, tell people what you actually do for a living. How do you help organizations besides the retention? What do you do in your
Yeah, thank
practice?
you. Hopefully, I help people think differently, number one, because I'm a believer that leadership is between the ears, right? It's 90% of it is how we think, 10% of it is the skills to lead. You can read the books, you can have the tools, but if you don't know how to use them, if you don't know how to think about them, I mean, let's just put it this way. If go back to the equality versus equity thing, if I think a certain way, if I have a bias about certain people, which I have biases, Mark, I talk about biases in the book.
Right.
If I have biases, right? Um, if I allow those biases to get in my way from a thinking standpoint, I'm going to struggle leading people. So number one, what I do is I help people think differently. Number one, about leadership, about communication, about how they lead other people, about how they add value to people. And so that comes through coaching or training. The other thing is it involves coaching, maybe one-on-one executive level leadership coaching, or performance coaching. Or number two, it's training, where I come into organizations, companies hire me to come in and train their entire leadership team. As you mentioned earlier, I'm building out a digital course for the Quit Losing Talent content. So eventually we'll be training people online. We do that already, but it'll be something kind of an on demand versus me having to be live to do that. And then we have the Lead Up podcast, which is a free podcast for people to listen to things like you heard today on your podcast, Mark.
Yeah, Lead Up podcast is really, really good. We're going to put all those links in the show notes so people can just go directly to you. And when you have your course up, when it's ready, I think you said about around June or so.
July, yeah.
Send me the link, and we'll just add that to the show notes for the podcast. And the book is "Quit Losing Talent: 20 Leadership Tactics to Win, Keep, and Inspire Great Employees." It is the perfect handbook to have on your desk, because we're all dealing with that all the time. Mike, thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Mark, thanks for the invite, man. I hope we can continue to collaborate and do big things in the world, because it certainly needs it. Thanks a lot.
Our brand colors are similar enough that it all kind of works together, right? So
Yeah, we can cross pollinate some of
that's
that. That's
that's
good.
important. To everybody else, like this leadership journey, it takes a ton of courage. It takes a ton of work. It takes more attention and more people skills than you ever dreamed. And so I thank you for coming along on the journey. I thank you for stepping up and doing what you need to do to help other people get where they want to go. I love you a ton. Have a great rest of the day.